Yesterday they said at the New York Times, should we put music or not when we do a podcast? And I see the difference with and without music. Huh? Maybe we should put music. Bonjour à tous. Good evening. My name is Mohamed Bouabdallah. I'm the Cultural Counselor of France in the US and Director of Villa Albertine. Welcome to Villa Albertine. We gather here tonight to celebrate the podcasting industry. And it's my pleasure to introduce this evening and our guests and to say a few introductory words about our support, the support of Villa Albertine for podcasting. This week marks the third edition of Sounds of New York, an exploratory, it's difficult to say in English, programme exploratoire created by Villa Albertine for podcasters that allows for fruitful dialogue between the French and American podcast industries. Our objective is that each thriving scene in France and in the US may draw inspiration from the other. That's what we do here at Villa Albertine. And we are happy to be joined tonight by 7 French podcast authors and creators who have been chosen by our jury from a record number of 148 applicants. I would like to take a moment to name them, and they will be introduced later by Raphaël. So there are Camille Maestracci, Christophe Payette, Zazie Tavitian, Tidiane Thiang, Nora Benaroche-Orsoni, Stéphane Michaka, and Estelle Janjo. Over the past week, and it's good that you applaud them because they have a very busy week, these creators have participated in a unique program of discussions, masterclasses, and pitching sessions at the Spotify headquarters. They also were able to meet the crème de la crème of the US podcast industry here in New York, including visits to the New York Times, and I was with them yesterday. It was really fascinating, including in some answers about no, we don't care about audience. WNYC and Pineapple Studios. Sounds of New York would not exist without our sponsors, key players in the French podcasting industry, and they are with us tonight, and I would like to thank them very warmly. Spotify, Radio France, SACD, la Société des auteurs et compositeurs dramatiques, l'Institut national de l'audiovisuel, so our National Archives for Audio and Videos, Radio France International. I was an intern at one point in my life in Radio France International. Et Institut français, Paradiso Media, OSHA, and of course, Albertine Foundation. So you see a lot of fairy godmothers on this program. In addition to the Sounds of New York program, our residency program in Villa Albertine has allowed several podcasters to pursue projects in the US. And one of our Villa Albertine residents, Jamal Ouazzani, who is here tonight to record his Jeans podcast live from the Villa Albertine. So he has finished his residency in Los Angeles, and we met when I was in Los Angeles for the Oscars. We had a very wonderful discussion. And you are exploring the themes of Arab and Muslim love, sexuality and gender in entertainment and in Hollywood. So he will be discussing these ideas tonight with the Zakar Twins, Michael and Zach. So we love podcasts so much that we have our own podcast. So not only we have a collection in a publishing house, Collection Albertine, we are going to have movies. I heard that this afternoon, that movies are being directed with the support of Villa Albertine, but we also have a podcast. It's called Coast to Coast, and you can listen to it at our podcast bar, which is across the hall in our bookstore. And it is produced by our editorial director, Raphaël Bourgois, who will interview 2 luminous podcasters tonight, Susan Burton, producer of the iconic This American Life, and Rashad Wright, the poet from Jersey City, who is somewhere. You're here. And we had a wonderful night of ideas in Jersey City, and you introduced it. It was so wonderful, and I'm so glad to have you with us tonight. So thank you very much. Finally, I would like to thank those who crafted the Sounds of New York program this week, and in particular, Paradiso Media's team, Amy Norris, Molly O'Keefe, and Claire Tai. I hope I'm saying it correctly. And, of course, Camille Jean-Jean, our new media officer. She's not new, but she's a new media officer at Villa Albertine. Have a great night. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mohamed. So we have the 7 podcasters tonight with us, the 7 winners of the 3rd edition of Sounds of New York, and we've asked them to take part in a very American exercise, the infamous elevator pitch. So since we were at the New York Times yesterday, as Mohamed mentioned, I'm much taller, that's why. We were at the New Yorker yesterday, and one of the producers, Daniel Guillemette, asked you to pitch him ideas. So now we're going to see if you've learned how to pitch ideas during your 1 week in the US. So I will call you one by one, and you have 2 minutes to present yourself and pitch your ideas. So Christophe Payette, you're the first, because I know you best. We go way back, Christophe and I. We were together at Radio France at what point? It was maybe 15 years ago. 10, let's say 10. And so Christophe is a journalist, an author, a producer, and you are the founder and editorial director of the podcast studio Sonic, and now editorial advisor to the television channel Arte. So please, Christophe, tell us all about you and your podcast.
Thank you, Raphaël. So nice. Hi. I'm glad to be here. It was a very exciting week, so thank you, Villa Albertine, for this program and for this invitation, and thank you all the partners. I think I'm pathological hyperactive, so I should maybe discuss that with my therapist, but better rather than with you, but that explain maybe why I'm doing a lot of things. Journalist, author, producer, publisher, party organizer. I created a publish house specialized in creative nonfiction. And also, yes, I work for the TV channel Arte, but the most important here is that I created 3 years ago this studio, Sonic, and also web radio, music web radio called Nick la Radio. That means beep, the radio. We are a very creative podcast studio telling stories about cultural subjects, particularly links between culture and societal issues. And I think we are unique, very unique. We tell very unique stories in the French podcast landscape with this perspective on society through a cultural view, a cultural point of view, and also with a creative way of make the podcast with a lot of sound design, a lot of music. And so we have made some documentaries about cannabis through a cultural and societal aspect. We have made documentaries about female gaze on skateboard culture. We have made documentaries about global dance floor music and their socio-cultural background and context. And there is a particular project we are working on. It's called Clubbing. It's a 6-episode series, documentary series, about the legendary nightclubs that changed the world. And because I think nightclubs not only embodies musical scene, but also are part of social change. So yeah, we are looking here in the US with Sonic for our soulmate, professional soulmate, to develop some partnership. And I'm sure that we are not the biggest podcast studio in France, but maybe the coolest, so thank you.
Thank you, Christophe. So I call now Camille Maestracci. Actually, I'm just following the order of the little leaflet you have over there. So, Camille, you are a freelance journalist, an author, and a podcaster, and you worked as a reporter and producer for local and national radio stations in France, and also in Qatar, Italy, and in the US. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. So I'm a journalist. I mostly write podcast documentary series. But what I'm working on right now with a partner in France, who is also a dear friend of mine and who is a singer and a music composer, is a pretty unique project, which has never been done, I believe, neither in France or in the US. It's the first hip-hop podcast musical ever. So we want to rewrote actually a fiction series which is gonna also become a music album. So the story is about Nina, our main character, who is a beat maker. She's a very introvert person. She doesn't feel secure about herself. She's a studio rat. Her secret hidden talent is that she raps. So we follow her journey while she struggles to find her own identity, either her art identity or person identity. And yeah, it's a story we want to tell because it tells a lot about the syndrome, the imposter syndrome, sorry, that a lot of people have, especially women, and especially female artists, and especially when you're a beat maker, a female beat maker, which is really rare. And a lot of people put you in a box, like if you do beat making, that means you have to do this, and like you cannot rap or do anything else. So yeah, it's a pretty universal story, and we really want it to exist with a music album. So this is basically what I'm working on right now, among other projects as a journalist, of course. So if you're interested to know more, please come see me. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille. I now call Zazie. Zazie Tavitian is a journalist and author who has worked for various media outlets on subjects related to food, politics, and intimacy.
Thank you. First, hello, and thanks to everyone and to Villa Albertine for this week, a very amazing week, and also to all the people in the organization, Spotify and Paradiso, because it was really, really well organized, and we saw a lot of very interesting people. 5 years ago, when my cousin Raphaël told me about a book that had belonged to my great-grandmother Jeanne, a recipe book that Jeanne had written, I have no idea that this story would take me so far. In my family, everyone knows Jeanne, but no one speaks about her. The only thing that we know is that she was deported. So when Raphaël told me about this recipe book, I thought Jeanne cooked, Jeanne had a life. I thought before she died, Jeanne was alive. And I decided to tell this story and to make a podcast with this story. And this story led me to travel in France and in Israel to interview my family. My technique was simple, cooking Jeanne recipes to get my family to talk about a difficult story. I also found an incredible number of archive, love letters, pictures, diary that Jeanne had written. And I tried to understand her deportation, the reason of her deportation, because it was taboo in my family. I wanted to use everything to bring Jeanne to life in a very inventive and free way. Obviously, always with a journalist rigor, but in the way I tell the story. When this podcast came out, I was happy to get article and to win a great documentary prize, but I was very, very happy because I received a lot of letters, message from listeners, and not only listeners. We had a history with Judaism, but a lot of all kind of listeners just being touched by the difficulty of passing on a family history. And maybe people knew that maybe cooking was a way to conjure our ghosts, nice ghosts. And after this podcast, Jeanne became a graphic novel. and it's here. And now I hope that maybe it could touch an American audience. So I'm looking for maybe people we want to make the adaptation in English. And that's all.
Thank you, Zazie. Tidiane Tiang, thank you for coming. Tidiane is a radio producer and film director, and you have produced and directed documentaries and fiction in various African countries and in France, and you work as a fiction director at Radio France.
Thank you.
Merci.
Hello, my name is Tidiane, and I am a fiction director at the French radio. I'm from Senegal. It's a country of West African country, and 7 years ago I lived to Paris, and when my daughter was born, I asked myself how I can to create a link between my culture from Senegal and her to live in Paris. And I decided to create Africa account. What means Africa account? L'Africa account, that's the tools for Africa. And it's 20 episodes for 7 to 10 minutes. And this is a podcast on the most listener on the Radio France International. Now I want to translate it in English version for the black people from United States and country of Africa who we speak English. I'm looking for the financial support to produce that. This is my project. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Tidiane. Thank you for being so brief. It's because it's important to keep the time, as you know, during a radio show. So Nora Benaroche Orsoni will join us now. She's a radio documentary producer and a writer and a doctor of social anthropology. And Nora creates podcasts and independent documentaries for France Culture, the best radio in the world, and other podcast studios. Her creative projects integrates her interest in history, feminism, queerness, and identity.
Hi, thank you. So you already said everything that is to say about me. I'm not going to repeat that. I'm just going to add that in addition to all of this, I am also a lesbian. And so just like me, and even if you're straight, I bet you probably know everything that is to know about San Francisco. The Beat Generation, the gay capital, the 70s, the AIDS crisis. Yeah, we've heard everything. I bet you've heard everything you needed to hear about Harvey Milk and the Castro district. But did anybody tell you about the Mission district? Have you ever heard that in the 90s, the city was a lesbian El Dorado, where the dykes ran the game in culture and activism? Well, I at least didn't know that until I traveled there. Nobody had told me about that. So I traveled there, and very quickly I realized I was surrounded by so many gay men. And not only was I completely invisible to them, which was not very pleasant, but I was also the only lesbian in the streets. So I started wondering and asking myself, where is my people? That's how I started investigating. Why are the lesbians invisible in San Francisco? What's wrong with this city? What happened to them? So this project, this immersive and narrative documentary series, is the story of my quest as a French lesbian for my missing queer and lesbian ancestors, as I try to understand why this story has been erased and what we're missing by not knowing about it 30 years later. Between the late 80s, at the peak of the AIDS crisis, and the early 2000s, when the tech industry took over the city and literally destroyed any kind of culture outside the mainstream, San Francisco was actually home to a lesbian golden age. And very few people realize how much it influenced queer and straight pop culture in this country. Like music, TV industry, drag culture, literature, gender and sexual freedom. So much of what makes Euro-American culture today, you owe it to the dykes and trans men of that time and space. So I've already interviewed 7 people, starting with writer Michelle T, who you maybe have heard about because she founded Drag Story Hour. And I am in touch with, 30 more people. All of them are eager to get their archives out and tell their own version of the story. And I think it's time to bring this story together, give it its historical and political due, and share it with American listeners. So I am here, talk to me, talk about it to your friends and producer friends, and help me get this project done in English, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. I now call Stéphane Michaka, who is a writer, who writes theater pieces, children books, and novels, and obviously also is into podcast and audio. So now the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Villa Albertine and its partners. The reason I'm here is that I'd like to borrow for a couple of days the Lincoln Center or the Brooklyn Academy of Music or Carnegie Hall. Carnegie Hall would do, I'm not picky, because I've written a musical fiction podcast. It's called The Island of Never Too Late. It's a partnership between 5 orchestras in France. It's touring France right now to great popular success and raving reviews. It was commissioned by the Orchestre National de Bretagne, and then it was played in Avignon, Cannes, in Picardy, and soon in Mulhouse. And it will soon be performed in English in Wales because the composer is a 35-year-old Welsh composer whose name is Sarah Leanne Lewis. And she's a living composer who did a marvelous score that she worked on last year. And my dream is to bring it to the US. It's the story of a 10-year-old girl who lives on an island in the North Atlantic. Her name is Lise, and she finds polar animals landing on her island, and she wants to help them. And soon Lise understands that her own island is in danger of being submerged. So she'll take the animals and show them the way in order to help them find kelp. Kelp forests are essential to marine ecosystems. It's a giant alga. And the story enables children to understand what we can do for ocean preservation. So I need a producer for that, a podcast producer, and also a concert hall, a venue to perform it, an orchestra, a pianist, and an American actress capable of impersonating a 10-year-old girl. And I'm sure it would appeal to American audiences, children and adults alike. So anyone interested, please get in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stéphane. And our last podcast producer is Estelle Jonjo, who is a radio and podcast journalist, specialized in social issue. And, well, you started, Estelle, your career at RFI. We've talked about RFI earlier. And then you've worked for Reuters and Voice of America in Senegal, Dakar. So twice Senegal tonight. And it's important. And now the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Le meilleur pour la fin. So, hi, my name is Estelle Jonjo. I'm a journalist and podcaster. The podcast I'm going to talk to you about, his name is The Real Emilys in Paris. And it's about, obviously, this Netflix TV show. I was very inspired by this, but it's about American people living abroad in France who decided to move in Paris and to live their best life. And guess what? Well, they have been experiencing some Parisian syndrome. And I don't know if you know this syndrome, but it's basically an emotional breakdown that you have when you visit France and Paris especially, because you realize that Paris is not this, how could I say that, Versailles Disneyland that people think it was is actually a real city where people are really living. And lately this year, a whole trend on TikTok appeared about influencer who was saying that Paris was actually a scam, that it was very dirty, that it was very smelly. And yeah, I know, right? And I'm a born and raised Parisianer. I think that's just a very bad thing for a city that will host this summer the Olympic Games. So I want you guys to be prepared. So this is why I wanted to do this podcast, because I want to fight the misconception of Paris. So it will be like an immersive documentary of the daily life of American people who really lived in Paris, but not like Emily Cooper, you know, like this Sex and the City kind of version of Paris. It will be like a realism thing, like, for example, Fatima, who dreams to become a writer, like James Baldwin, or like Amanda, who dreams about getting married to a French guy, and she has a lot to say about dating life in France, for sure. So to me, it's also a podcast about demystifying the myth of Paris. To me, it's about a podcast about the fact that Paris is changing. It's not just a very white and wealthy city. I'm the living proof of that. And it's also about a podcast of a city and a country that needs to be rebranded to stick to realism, and this reality is still beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So I can see that you've done your homework and that everyone really knows how to pitch now. So we'll, in a minute, we'll start a new moment of this evening where we are going to record a live podcast. But first, let me introduce you to Raimundo Atal. Raimundo is a musician, and he will tonight perform live at different moments of the evening, starting right now. Raimundo. Thank you, Raimundo Atal. So good evening to all those who have joined us for this evening dedicated to podcast on the theme affirming, sorry for my French accent, affirming identity through podcast. I'm Raphaël Bourgois, editorial director of the Villa Albertine, and your host for tonight. We are very happy to welcome you at Villa Albertine's New York headquarters in the beautiful Payne Whitney Mansion. Over the next 2 hours, we'll hear podcaster and feminist Susan Burton, who's already at the table, slam poet Rashad Wright, who will treat us with a performance, queer artist and activist, the Zakar Twins, at the microphone of Jamal Ouazzani. Jamal is a resident here at Villa Albertine and the producer of Jean's podcast. And finally, House of Teflon Voguing and will be here tonight for you, an experiential evening, so to speak, that's being recorded, of course. The explosion of podcasting in recent years came with what we might call a true revolution in intimacy. The bodies, experience of one's gender, sexuality, race, have become political objects and the starting point for enlightening narratives, often in the form of podcast, and we have some of the best producers of this kind of podcast with us tonight. One of them is Susan Burton, who produced the Retrieval for Serial. We'll come to that a bit later. You are a long-time staffer at This American Life, the mythical This American Life, should I say. You have produced, edited, or reported some of the show's most memorable episodes about women's experience. Maybe we can talk about Tell Me I'm Fat, 5 Women, 10 Sessions. In The Retrieval, you investigate a story that combines the subjects of gynecological violence, the disregarded for women's voices, and the fentanyl crisis that's gripping America today. Before we begin to discuss this series, maybe we can listen to a small teaser if you can send it, yeah.
The women are seeking fertility treatment for a variety of reasons. They've had a couple miscarriages and they're pushing 40. They don't have fallopian tubes, or they need sperm. All of them wind up at the fertility clinic at Yale University. They meet their doctors, get the info, start giving themselves the shots. And eventually they get to the day they've been waiting for. The day of the first egg retrieval. The day of the retrieval, the women arrive at the clinic. They check in on different mornings, in different months, and calendar years. None of them are here on the same day, but they will come out of the day with the same story.
They started the procedure, and, I was just sort of taken by surprise, not expecting the excruciating pain. My blood pressure started going up. I was sweating profusely and telling them I was just in too much pain, that they had to stop. At that point, I remember them giving me more of the pain medication and me saying, it's not making a difference.
I remember yelling or kind of making and really looking in confusion at my nurse, the attending nurse, and her saying, I'm giving you the most I can legally give you.
She said that that's the maximum that she's allowed to give me, so she couldn't give me anything else.
At one point, they did say that I had maxed out. I couldn't have any more fentanyl or Versed. And I was like, how is this possible? How is that even, how am I feeling? How do people go through this? I remember thrusting my hips up saying, I feel everything. I don't know. But what are you gonna do? I wanted the procedure done. I just let it happen and I was like, I'm awake, so.
The patients didn't know why they were in pain. Their doctors didn't know either. And in the absence of information about the pain, people came up with stories to explain it. The patients constructed stories. Staffers at the clinic came up with theories too. Eventually, a nurse would tell her own story about the pain, as would Yale.
The Yale Fertility Clinic is not one doctor in a back alley. This is an entire institution that's behind it. It's got this reputation. How do they not see that this is happening?
Am I being difficult? I mean, you just question your sense of self. You are treated like a hysterical woman from the second you walk in there.
Like nobody believed me. I felt crazy.
In fertility treatment, you evaluate the outcome by whether you wind up with a baby. The outcomes here are a lot more complicated for everyone.
Are you kidding me?
That's when I lost it.
I could almost feel like the bomb drop.
Bullshit. No harm done.
There's no way I can ever look at this lady the same way.
From Serial Productions and the New York Times, I'm Susan Burton. This is The Retrievals.
Hello, Susan.
Hi.
Thank you for being here.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
Before we get into the development and production of The Retrieval, just a word about your background and how you came to podcast and to producing radio shows, and how did you manage to get to work for This American Life?
Of course. So I graduated from college in 1995, and I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to work in magazines. My first job out of college was at Harper's Magazine. And in those years, This American Life was brand new. And I heard it on the radio. It sounded like nothing I'd ever heard before. And I had this feeling like I wanted to be inside that radio doing that work. And I was very fortunate. I applied for a job and got a job there in 1999 and moved to Chicago, where the radio show was then located, and worked there for a little while, and then spent some intervening years freelancing, doing more magazine journalism, more radio stuff, and ultimately found my way back to This American Life.
Just a word about this show for the French audience who might not know it. How would you describe This American Life?
Of course. So what This American Life did that was so new when it started is it applied the tools of journalism to everyday personal stories, and it had the style of storytelling felt very different than the typical thing on public radio with a sort of formal, newscaster. This American Life, really the DNA of a lot of podcasting today is contained in those early years of This American Life.
And when did you develop a specific interest in women's story?
I think that's sort of always been my area of interest. I mentioned graduated from college. The topic of my senior essay in college was the invention of the teenage girl, and so I've always been interested in the experiences of women and women's lives in that storytelling.
And would you agree that with the idea that podcasting lately has accompanied a revolution in intimacy, as I was stating beginning the show, a revolution that has given a voice to those who were, in many cases, still are, unfortunately, deprived of one?
Well, I do think, one of the things that people have long said about radio, and people often say about radio or, / audio, is that it is the most intimate medium. And I do think that often women's stories are, have intimacy, right, contained into them as essential to them. So I do think that the medium is very well suited to telling women's stories.
As we've heard from the teaser we've just listened to, The Retrieval is about fertility treatment that went very wrong at the Yale Clinic. Would you say that, first and foremost, this series for Serial, The Retrieval, is about women who have been silenced and denied a voice?
I think that the way that I saw the series was that it was an emotional investigation. There was a crime at stake in the series, but what I thought I was investigating was the women's emotional experiences, which definitely, I think, the dozen patients I interviewed, all of them would have characterized their experience as one of being dismissed, ignored, disbelieved.
Serial is known as First of all, as a crime series of podcasts, a crime show, so to speak, but it's much more than that, and your series shows it. Can you explain us how you found this story, what interest you had into it, and how did you report on it?
Sure. So I came to the story just like scrolling on my phone one night. It just like came up in my algorithm it was a local news story from like the New Haven Register about the fact that several patients had just filed a lawsuit against Yale. And it was, just a news article that gave the bare bones of the story. This was November 2021, but I was just immediately interested. I read this story on a Friday night, and by Saturday morning, I had already, reached out to the lawyer representing the patients and downloaded all of the legal documents from the nurse's criminal case. I was just drawn to so much that was suggested here, like the themes of addiction and longing to be a mother and infertility and, the opioid crisis and women's pain. Although I would say that was a theme that didn't emerge strongly until I actually started doing the interviews and talking to the patients.
So the first theme you went into was the fentanyl crisis, and then came the question of the pain of the women.
Yes, I mean, I read this news story, and I just wanted to know, what happened? How did this feel to everyone involved? Who is this nurse? Who are these patients? And when I imagined the story, I initially imagined that it would be about the collision between the nurse's need for the drug with the patient's need to have a child. And like I said, it wasn't until I started interviewing the patients that I realized that this was so much more complex and layered than I'd understood.
And how did you get these women to talk? Because obviously it's a very intimate subject, and even one of the women you're talking to, she tells you, I'm a very secret person, and now I have to do that. I have to bear witness to what I lived. So it's one more thing above all the other things. How did you get them to testify?
Yes. So everybody who spoke to me because they wanted to tell their story. This wasn't a situation as a reporter where I was, trying to persuade, and these were all people who wanted to tell their story. That said, I think that more than one of them had ambivalence about that. So the woman you mentioned, her name is Leah, and she speaks very well in the podcast about how it's almost another kind of violence. If they want anything to change, if they want justice, accountability, they have to talk about these really intimate things. IVF is often a process that people are pretty, can be very private about anyway. So not only did these patients have this horrible thing happen to them, it was already, on top of the existing privacy.
There's a systemic dimension to your project. In the final episode, I guess it's a final episode as I remember, you questioned the responsibility of the academic, because it happens at Yale's University Hospital, the medical, obviously, that are not believing these women, saying that hundreds of women, like maybe 200, maybe more, that are saying they're experiencing excruciating pain during the procedure, and obviously the legal institution following all of that, because, well, I'm not going to tell everything, because obviously it's important to be able to discover the story unfolding while you're listening to the podcast, but there's a legal aspect to it. And so maybe that's where, and that was my question, whether intimate becomes political when you move through these systemic questions.
I think that exactly, like one of the things that was so appealing to me about the story, and one of the things that made it, a 5-episode podcast as opposed to a 1-episode thing, is that it's the intersection of these personal, intimate stories with various systems. They intersect with Yale, which is an incredibly powerful institution. So they're intersecting with that institution. They're intersecting with the medical system. They're intersecting with the criminal justice system, the nurse's story, and how the criminal justice system handles it becomes a really contentious point in the piece.
Obviously. So we have very little time, unfortunately, and I think it's not good to talk too much about this series, as I was saying, because it's better to listen to it, obviously. And maybe I have another question, but it's more about what kind of podcast listener you are and what kind of podcast you like. And do you have any listening tips you can share with us tonight?
Sure, yes. I mean, I listen to a whole range of stuff, right? You know, I listen to the kind of stuff that I make, the kind of narrative podcast. I listen to podcasts where it's just two friends talking to each other. I listen to interview podcasts. I listen to a whole range of stuff. But you know, there are two podcasts that I always love to tell people about when I'm asked this question. And one of them is called Appearances. This podcast came out a few years ago, I think 2020. The creator is Sharon Mashihi. And what's really special about Appearances is it's almost like the first sort of, well, maybe not the first, but it's a wonderful example of an autofiction podcast. It's not, it draws on elements from Sharon's own life. But what's extraordinary is she plays almost every character herself. Like instead of having a cast of actors, she does it herself. It's just fantastic. I highly recommend it. And then another podcast, I think this was also 2020, which is sort of this marvelous year for podcasting, even though a lot of other things were going wrong. This is a podcast called The Invisible Woman, and it's by Karina Longworth, who makes a series called You Must Remember This, about sort of tales of old Hollywood. But The Invisible Woman is about Polly Platt, who was a Hollywood producer during the 70s, 80s, 90s, and she was sort of a woman behind all of these great men, like Peter Bogdanovich was her first husband. But it draws on this unpublished memoir by this unknown woman, and you know there are interviews with all sorts of people in her life. It's just an extraordinary example of a podcast series about one unknown woman.
Thank you very much, Susan. You can listen to The Retrieval wherever you get your podcast. I've learned this sentence since I've moved to New York. In a few minutes, we'll be joined by the slammer and poet Rashad Wright, who is already here with us. But first, Raimundo. Thank you, Raimundo Atal. So we continue our evening dedicated to affirming identity through podcast here in public at Villa Albertine's New York headquarters. And we'll be joined in a few seconds by Rashad Wright. Rashad, as I said earlier, is a poet and a slammer, and also published a book, 2 books actually, but lately another one, Papa's Tango, right here, I got it, and you might be able to ask him if he has a few copies for you right after the show. Good evening, Rashad.
Good evening.
I'm just gonna not look at you when I'm talking to you because you're on my back, but I got a quick question before you start your performance. Are you a podcast listener, Rashad, and what kind of podcast do you listen to?
Yes, I am a podcast listener. I listen mainly to a lot of podcasts about psychology and how neurology works. A couple of my friends happen to teach and host their own shows, of which I am an avid listener and supporter.
So I'm used to this kind of exercise. So, Rashad, the floor is yours.
Thank you. How's it going, everyone? Nice to meet you. My name is Rashad Wright. I've never been wrong. Thank you. Yes, I'm a poet, performer, writer from Jersey City, New Jersey, born and raised. And all of my poetry is about identity. It's all about who I am, my personal experience. And I think a powerful performance is someone that is able to share themselves with their audience. And that's my goal every time I share my poetry and take up space on a stage. And one way I do that is I like to make sure that everyone in the room is involved with me. When I say day by day, I would love if you responded, we're getting better and better. Can you do that for me? Super simple, super easy. Day by day? I would like to believe that. I said day by day? Yes, indeed, we are. As I was saying, my name is Rashad, which is interesting because it's kind of an Arabic name. It means someone who is always on the right path. And that's funny because I've taken more wrong turns than newlyweds in horror movies. I'm the oldest of 3. So at one point, there were 2 little girls that looked just like me, and they had to sit through all my TV shows. So they knew all 152 Pokemon before they knew the alphabet had the last letter. I can run 2 miles in like 12 minutes. I can swim a whole lap in a single chewed up breath. And if you give me a bicycle, I'll make a car think it was a skateboard. I don't believe in capital letters. I believe in equal opportunity. I'm pretty sure Tupac Shakur is alive and hiding in New Jersey, and I'll never shower before getting into a pool. I'm pretty sure it defeats the purpose. I'm my mother's son, so whenever I rise, it's always her shine in my eyes, and she raised my voice Christian. So all these poems have at least one amen in it. Can I get an amen? Because back in the days, I believed in God. And then I started believing in myself. Nowadays, I dream big enough to try believing in both at the same time. I'm like kind of allergic to nuts. I wear dog tags. I act like it's a rosary. I know my right side. I don't know my left. I've done more sports than states I've been to. I fight hard and love hard enough to break my own heart in half. I'm ex-National Guard. So I was part-time soldier, full-time pissed off. I fired more bullets than hands I shook. I had so many guns in my mouth that I could spit out a full clip when I love someone. Trust that I hold them with a full grip, and I am bad at lying. And on most days, I'm even worse at dealing with the truth. And the truth is, I feel like a car accident that keeps waking up in the morning. All of this morning is never done. No matter how many yesterdays I've had, I'm good. It's so many things and can do it all with a whole family tree tied behind my back and still feel like a really small fish. Spread out the feed and an entire table. I can have skin made out of gold and still confuse it for rust. I'm a dragon in denial of my own flame. My voice is a fairy tale I'm still trying to believe in. I hate talking about myself, but I'm really good at the things I hate, and sometimes I'm so hard on myself that tomorrow always feels like a miracle. Sent to the wrong address. I mean, we all heard the saying, practice makes perfect, and I've had to practice living this broken for so long, you couldn't fix me even if you tried, but I still try, and I try, and I try, and I try, and I try. But all that aside, my name's Rashad, and you have no idea how nice it is to meet you. Thank you.
Rashad Wright, ladies and gentlemen, who is never wrong. Is that true, Rashad?
No, not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit. You started saying that your poetry is always about your identity. So can you elaborate a bit about that? So how did you... Is it the poetry that comes first, the identity? How does it go?
Formally, I'm actually a memoir writer. So memoir is all about capturing memory and moments in time. I fuse that with my poetry. So in doing so, all of my poetry is always non-fictional and always about me accounting moments in time, different characters and people I've met in my life, and all the themes, symbols, and lessons I can get from average everyday relationships with people that just walk everyday life alongside me.
I was caught by one thing you just said. You said, my voice is a fairy tale I'm still trying to believe in. So speaking, like doing slam, this thing is a kind of way to try to believe in yourself? Or in your voice?
Day by day?
We're getting better and better.
Yes. That's something I started while I was on the men's cross-country team in my college. I was the only runner for 2 years, and I didn't have any support or anyone else. And there were like teams that had cheerleaders, a rhythm section, drums and all that. And it was just me by myself. When I finally got a team, when I finally got a community, when there were finally others alongside me, the one thing I had to tell my people that ran alongside me was that every single day we could be better than ever, even if we are by ourselves right now. And I say all that to say that performing can feel very lonely and often does, but I make sure, or at least one of my intentions is to break down the stage, fuse the performer with the audience. I want all of us to have the same experience together. And I think podcasting is a good way of doing that because it breaks that wall between the listener and the person speaking. And I would love to continue figuring out other ways to really break down that wall the same way I try to do in live performances. Did I answer your question?
You did. Have you considered doing poetry podcast?
Like I was telling you, my friend has a psychology podcast. I've done a few episodes alongside him. I have thought about doing my own podcast just about poetry where I talk about different poems, break them down, and explain things that different writers are doing. Just haven't made the necessary steps towards that. I'm doing so much, and it's just exhausting living life every day.
You've just pitched it, and there's a lot of people producing podcasts here, so maybe you'll find someone to help you. Just one last question about a book, because as you said, you take the stage, and we've seen that you do it in a very good way, but you still want to publish books. That's old-fashioned.
My father was a jazz singer, so old-fashioned arts kind of runs in my veins. I myself am a poet. My uncle was the poet laureate of New Jersey. I was the poet laureate of Jersey City. So I just continually find myself following in the footsteps of my predecessors. I can't wait to find a new way to reinvent poetry and a new platform to bring it to. But right now, all I know, what I've been taught, is how to publish, how to write, how to edit, and this is Papa's Tango and all of that skill, experience, and talent that I cultivated in the last 2 books I came up with. I noticed a common theme in a lot of the shows that are going on tonight is femininity and the feminine identity. Papa's Tango was all about masculinity and the violence that men have to learn in order to survive. But my first book, Romeo's Whiskey, is all about me being raised by my single mother. It's much more about femininity and the magic that one needs to believe in themselves in order to survive in this current climate. So feel free to check it out.
For sure. Thank you very much, Rashad.
Thank you.
So in a moment, Jamal Ouazzani, Villa Albertine's resident podcaster, will be offering a recording of his podcast, Jeans. His guests are the duo artists, the Zakar Twins. So stay tuned, as we say, just after a quick break.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome on Jen's podcast. Jen's is the very first podcast that addresses love, sexualities and gender for Arabs and or Muslims. Today, thanks to Villa Albertine, where I was a resident artist for 2 months in Los Angeles, I have the pleasure to talk about a topic that I am obsessed with, and that will essentially be the theme of my third season, which is how can we rethink representations of Black, Indigenous, people of color, and or Muslim gender identities and sexualities in cinema, entertainment, and the media. I did have interviews with scholars, artists, directors of Hollywood royalty, Hollywood superstars, coming soon on Jins, so brace yourselves. I have also spent every single day going through dozens of books and more than 200 movies since the beginning of Hollywood to further understand how those stereotypes were manufactured. So one of my bedside readings was the book Real Bad Arabs, How Hollywood Vilifies a People by media studies scholar Jack Shaheen, who analyzed 1,000 films made between 1896 and 2000. Of those films portraying Arab characters, only 12 were positive depictions, and the rest, more than 900 movies, were negative. And that was before 9/11. So, for example, in 1921, the movie The Sheikh opens with an image of Bedouins riding camels in the desert with a message on the black screen that sets up the scenery and that says, "Where the children of Araby dwell in happy ignorance, that civilization has passed them by." No comment. Many of the last century's big and small screen stereotypes about the Arab and or Muslim community stem from what we call Orientalism. The concept of Orientalism, as Palestinian professor Edward Said articulated in 1978, is a pervasive framework that has exoticized and marginalized the East in favor of a dominant Western narrative. Early Hollywood films depicted the Middle East as this magical desert with genies, flying carpets, mummies, belly dancers, and harems. It created an other from the so-called monolithic East of the 1001 Nights, hammams, and crusades. At that time, male travelers, colonizers, and painters who went to the Middle East, and sometimes not even set foot there, had erotic fantasies in mind, having been fed images of the exotic beauty behind the veil, and thus sexualized expectations of the so-called Arab women, as if there were such a thing as the Arab woman. The Arab woman, equivalent to, obviously, the Muslim women, is then both silent and overexposed, which black veil makes invisible and also hypervisible to the eyes. It's basically a handmaiden that is serving the violent agenda of her oppressive male counterpart. Because yes, the constant demonization and vilification of Arab men makes them, till today, the embodiment of evil, theft, perversion, violence, and crime. Now, what happens for a person who is at the intersection of being Arab and queer? Remember Jafar from Aladdin? Totally queer. Historically, the term queer was used pejoratively to describe bizarre individuals who deviated from the normal sexual and gender norms. In the late 1980s, activists within the LGBT+ community started to use queer as a symbol of defiance against the heteronormative society as a political identity they're proud of. So, Jafar's jewelry, oddity, slimness, long eyelashes, long nails, long fingers, fine features, effeminate gait, all of that is known as queer coding, where writers at the time used certain signs associated with gay people to make them appear scary and abnormal. Queer coding villains in Disney movies was an easy way for animation to mark a character as different by assigning a bunch of cliché queer stereotypes that the audience absorbs and associates with evil. Thankfully today, there are more positive depictions on TV, like 10 Friends on Netflix Queer Eye. You might have seen the character of Mo on Nurse Jackie, played by my friend Has Lehman, that I also interviewed on Jins. Kumail Nanjiani's series, Little America, included an episode about a gay Syrian Muslim man who seeks asylum in the US, also played by Has Lehman. Mike Mosallem's film, Breaking Fast, is a love story about a gay Muslim man in LA falling in love during Ramadan. Again, played by Has Lehman. The first gay couple in Marvel's history in the Eternals consisted of a black man and an Arab man. Again, played by Has Lehman. So here's a thought. Maybe, just maybe, there's not just one Arab gay actor in the whole wide world. And maybe Has Lehman should also be known for his other roles, like when he played Jesus Christ. You heard me. An Arab, gay, Muslim guy played Jesus Christ on screen. So, how can we subvert both the white gaze on the Arab bodies and the stigma attached to its queerness? Is there a specific type of journey of Middle Eastern gay men who want to break through this industry? To answer all these questions, join me in welcoming on stage Michael and Zakar, also known as the Zakar Twins. Hi.
Hey.
Hi. So the country might know you as the Middle Eastern Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. You're from Michigan. You also lived in LA, and you are quite new to New York. On social media, you represent the underrepresented voices of Middle Easterners in the entertainment industry. We're going to talk about that. From literature to television, you write about dark, serious topics with a very cheeky and perky sense of humor. You're both hilarious storytellers, you're activists, you're actors in your own play, adapted from your book, Pray the Gay Away.
We do it all.
Yeah, you do it all. It's incredible. So thank you so much for accepting my invitation on Jins. So we're gonna talk first about like the very beginnings. You grew up in Michigan, I guess bottle-fed with Arabs being equivalent to Muslims, being equivalent to thieves, savages, and terrorists, from cartoons to actual Oscar-winning movies. So with Hollywood slowly beginning to embrace diversity, what are your thoughts on its current portrayal of Middle Easterners on screen?
I think right now we're seeing a lot of like checked boxes. We're seeing like, oh, representation, but kind of done a little sometimes far-fetched. And not saying that there isn't loud queer Muslims and Arabs, but we're seeing characters like, I'm not sure if you've seen Beloved Victor. There was a character that was fully out, and the mom was like, yes, cool, you know, and that's just not the most realistic for a lot of us. So we're not seeing that side told.
I think a lot of representation in queer or Middle Eastern media, like what do we have? We have Aladdin, you said Jafar. We have Sex and the City 2, where the girls go to Abu Dhabi. Like, we don't have a lot of Middle Eastern representation in general, and what is portrayed as like terrorists, what is portrayed as
gas station
negative,
owners.
Gas station owners. So like people in America don't have an idea of what it means to be Middle Eastern because it is mixed in with Muslim, it is mixed in with other sort of subcultures, and people just like have no idea what it means to be like a Middle Eastern person.
Right, and they probably watched it on Aladdin. I get that when watching Aladdin, some of us wanted to be him and some of us wanted to be with him. You've not shied away yourself from merging the Iraqi and pride flags for using Arabic on your website, on the welcoming page of your website. We know how dangerous this can be for all the haters out there. I'm sure you've gone through also like weird reactions from the queer community as well. Given your unique position at this intersection in between being a Middle Eastern person and being queer, and also being writers, obviously you make your art out of that. How do you approach your own representation?
I think for me, when I write, I like to write something that's digestible to a larger audience. The problem I have with Middle Eastern media is that when it is trying to be digested to a wider audience, it's a little too on the nose with like the word Habibi on everything. It's
hummus everywhere.
Yeah, hummus everywhere. So I just think what to get people an understanding into like our home is to kind of relate to them. I try to make our writing as relatable as possible.
I think because we both focus on comedy, especially because when you think of Arabs, you don't really think hilarious. You think your mind does go terrorism, war, and like
9/11, which is
So a lot of our projects, we try to only focus on being funny and dark comedy, especially.
Yeah, I think we always try to find the light in the darkness,
Yeah, and just to be very precise, you're actually not exactly Arabs, but Christian Iraqis that we name Chaldeans. So how has this Chaldean heritage and upbringing influenced the stories you chose to explore in your creative work?
I think so. I can't say like white people, I would say, can relate to us because we're Christian Iraqi. So we understand the religious background, but so many people confuse us for Muslim.
Right.
And even when we were pitching the book as a TV show, so many people were like, "Oh, can there be more than 2 Muslim shows?" I was like, "Well, we're not Muslim."
Right.
I think for me, I always strayed away. Like growing up, I strayed away from our culture because I didn't understand it, and B, it shunned us for like who we were. So for me, I never felt connected as a Middle Eastern person. And as we like grew up and kind of came into our own, I became prideful of a culture that almost wanted us dead. I was like, we are like a unique beings. We don't talk about like it's kind of exciting that we're, in my delusional little head, changing history. Like we're trying to change what it means to be queer Middle Eastern men. And it's very exciting.
And that's beautiful, yeah. And I know that your coming out story has had a profound impact on so many people. Could you delve into like your family dynamics and how it might have evolved over the years, especially with your mom, who, as I know, as your book says, wanted to pray the gay away?
Yeah, so when we both came out, our mother reacted by throwing holy water on us and then leaving the house for a week.
Yeah. Oh my God.
She slept with the church, and it was I know, hilarious.
Yeah.
It was a decade journey of her really coming into her own, and Pray the Gay Away is really her journey of acceptance. And we like to say, like, we can't be mad at our mom for having such weird reactions, like force feeding us holy grapes in the middle of the night, because she's still a person learning. It wasn't taught to her. We're helping her unlearn those things that she never got. I mean, she wanted to be a nun, so we're breaking those. Yeah. We're breaking them really.
She always says, "Well, I didn't give birth to like one disease. I gave birth to 2 because like she didn't. She just thinks she's an unlucky person, and we had to teach her a lot of things. And the journey to acceptance was a long one, and that's where.
Well, as you know, there's not even a word for being gay in our language. It's a derogatory term.
Right.
So for her, that's why her head went to it, because she was never taught these things.
Exactly. The word is an insult. So how can you define yourself
Truly.
as that? Like, or accept your children when the word is an insult and it's the worst thing that can happen in life, or that like the laws are against it, obviously.
I know. We said we were going to be writers, and she said, no. You have to be gay and writers.
And so what did you learn yourselves from this acceptance journey that you had to teach her?
You know what I actually learned? I don't know if it's off topic, but I learned as we were going into this industry as like prideful Middle Eastern men that the most hate we were getting was from the Middle East, which was surprising. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, it's like going to be like old like white men who are going to hate us, but it was people like young people our age from the Middle East telling us to like go die, and I was like, it's so interesting that like we're fighting for our people while our people are fighting us. So it's a very like that's what I've learned to like. Try to find the people that relate to us, try to find the good people, the people who are hiding, so we can help those people and kind of expand that narrative.
Preach. Okay. And so you two moved to LA originally because of the success of your book, Pray the Gay Away. Yeah. You almost managed to get a buying agreement with a sister company to NBC to turn your book into a TV show. But I guess in a predominantly white industry, I want to know, like, what have been the most significant challenges you faced?
Well, the writer's strike.
I think
that was a hard one.
That also, yeah.
When we were first pitching the TV show, everyone had great reactions. The whole problem was who's going to play the mom character. And that was the biggest thing. because they wanted it to be a breakout starring role for someone. And at the time, they pitched it to Jennifer Coolidge.
Oh.
And we took a meeting with her, and it was amazing. She's the coolest person in the world, but
she was 40 minutes late to her Zoom call, but she's the coolest person in the world.
She didn't know how to use it, but
oh my God, spilling the tea.
She
was
so
cool. The problem we had was we just like couldn't stomach the idea of like a white woman playing mom, so we almost made the show half Middle Eastern, half American, and it just like didn't work out. And we were like, well, maybe we'll make her an aunt or something. We didn't know. So
there was a lot of challenges with the show because during the process, we got like 3, like, we're about to have greenlit it, and then 3 no's. And it's hard because you put so much of your heart into a project, and to get that rejection and just like throw it off is...
Well, we were pitching the show at the start of COVID, like in the middle of COVID, when COVID was still like not a thing. So we kept pitching to companies, and they're like, okay, when this COVID thing ends, we'll like pick it up. 2 years later, like nothing happened.
And then we were pitching with Hulu, Disney. The problem is, it's like we were hitting them at the wrong time.
Yeah, it just truly was right people, wrong time.
I like to say, like, look at the influx of like politics and entertainment kind of go hand in hand. We're seeing like now that Black Lives Matter is becoming huge in people's eyes, we're seeing more Black television.
Right.
But I think the thing is, people are scared of Arab culture. They're scared of Arab news. So it's hard to get that on TV because as good as our idea is and as amazing as the script is, it's hard for a company to get behind Arab because then you're support of Arabs.
Right, exactly. And I know you're starting also a new podcast potentially called Wish I Was a Nipple Baby about hustling in entertainment. In what way do you think that it would have been better for both of you if you were like Zoe Kravitz and Lily Rose Depp?
Well, this new podcast focuses on 2 boys. I mean, our journey of like being middle class, like people trying to make it in the entertainment field. Because I've realized, I'm like, everyone who's making it comes from money. And I was like, I mean, maybe it's like an obvious thing.
I think living in LA, that was severely obvious to us because we were pitching in Michigan and we moved for the opportunity. And when you're just, we were working a lot of mansion parties when we were there, and just working for celebrities, you really see the marketing behind everything and how everything is just like, it's just so fake.
It's based on like money, talent, followers, which is, it's ugly. Like talent is kind of the last thing people look for. And a lot of these people who are Nepo babies like get ahead, and it's like unfair for the people who don't have those connections. And our podcast explores pop culture and just like our journey of trying to make it big.
Well, we're excited to listen to it. You've also been, I want to know also like a bit more about your creative process too, like especially how you approach writing comedy on very sensitive topics, but also like as you're both writers and you're twins, you're twin brothers, like do you think and write the same?
No.
Sometimes
I'll be like looking at a word like the, and I'll be thinking about it for like 3 hours, and I can't move on. Whereas Zach is more of a spit right.
Okay.
I have to like. We like to say like, how do you say this house analogy?
Oh, I like to say that like, I like to say Michael builds the house and I decorate it. That's how we write.
Okay.
But when it comes to writing, what I've learned is like the idea is not the idea until you're writing it. Like you'll be writing something about like. I was like workshopping something about aliens, and then it came out to be like a gay story. I was like, I don't know where this came from. It's a gay alien story. I don't know. I'm still workshopping it. But when you're writing something, my process is just kind of like going with the flow, seeing what works, and then you just start creating like different storylines. I use a lot of what I'm inspired from in real life. Like I'll just like, if something pisses me off, I'll be like, I want to put this in a film. Like, so it's real life.
I get more inspired by like the jobs. I used to have 40 part-time jobs.
Not at the same time.
No, like I would have a job, quit it, because the only thing I'm passionate about is writing, which is unfortunate. If you hate yourself, go in entertainment. So I get inspired by just like the people actually working and just living out here and trying to stay positive. That's where I find the character really comes from.
Amazing. You've also been open about like body and sex positivity. You're very often topless or even almost naked on pictures. You're soon launching an Arab underwear line. You're writing another book about your own journeys journeys in discovering your bodies and sexualities, named I'm Going to Cathy's. Why this title?
The title comes from when we used to go out and get laid, we would tell our mom, I'm going to Cathy's, like, which is a lie. So I say
Cathy's our best friend, and it's basically us taking her persona. Like,
but she doesn't exist.
No, she's real.
No, she's real. I say us as like gay people, we don't have like gay sex ed. So for us, like self-discovery comes from sketchy hookups. So the book kind of explores sketchy hookups and like what it taught us, and you know, the identity of Cathy.
Like what kind of sketchy hookups?
Well, you know, like,
gotta buy the book. No,
I mean, as a queer culture, being gay is sometimes very scary because you're put in these situations you put yourself in where you don't know these people's names. You just walk into a room.
But I've walked into many rooms without knowing their name. No, I mean, like, we came out to each other because we hooked up with the same guy, not at the same time, but like the
community is very small.
The community is small, and like I find personally through sex, you find a lot about yourself.
There's also a double movement I keep on mentioning on my podcast regarding Middle Eastern queer bodies, which is the fascination that comes at the same time as the repulsion. So the bodies can be rejected just because of the race and ethnicity, and they can be fetishized just because of the race and ethnicity, especially when you add it up, I guess, with like the twin fetishization. Have you had like that before?
Yes.
Yes.
I avoid our DMs at all costs. I think for me and Michael, we started in this industry as we were younger. We started being on social media when we were 17. And when we were 17, the only thing we could offer was like our bodies, where we were like, oh, let's like pose in our underwear and be like cute and fun. And I think through the years, in our heads, we started off as like modeling, then we kind of got into acting, and then writing kind of found us, and writing was the space where we felt most safe. Like modeling was never something I thought was like fun for us. I hated it. I hated posing with my brother. I'm like, this is weird, but like it's making money.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You also had like some kind of Broadway show, like a
off
Broadway.
No.
It's off Broadway.
Off
Broadway. Okay.
Broadway.
How was it? So it's an adaptation of your book?
So we had the pleasure of making Pray the Gay Away into a play. It traveled for a couple of years. It was one of the worst experiences of my life.
I will say one of the worst and best.
Through bad business, you learn good business.
Anyone in theater knows how dramatic behind the scenes of being in theater is, and I was not prepared for that. There was just so many issues with going on tour. We almost got sued on tour.
Wow.
Our production company, if you're listening, was just like they didn't know what they were doing. They're infamous for putting up a show for a night and going like to city to city, and we were sitting in cities for months, and they had no idea how to sell a new show for a month, and they blamed us because it was our book. But I'm like, you bought the rights.
Right, exactly.
You do the work.
Exactly. So I want to get back to like the fetishization aspects of,
go off.
You know. So I know that Westerners love to remind us how Middle Eastern countries are barbaric when it comes to homosexuality or queerness in general. So before I ask my last question, I'll quickly define two terms for also the listeners out there. The first term is pinkwashing. Pinkwashing refers to the practice of attempting to benefit from support for LGBTQIA+ rights, often as a way to profit or to distract from a separate agenda, which is generally a very right-wing agenda, and homonationalism. Homonationalism, as defined by Professor Jasbir Puar, is the idea that the US presents itself as exceptionally LGBTQI-friendly, in contrast to the homophobic Muslim countries. It makes, then, homosexuality a Western, white, liberal social phenomenon, while making homophobia an Oriental, brown, black, Middle Eastern, African, backwards social phenomenon. So how do you guys feel about this, especially with what we're currently witnessing in Palestine with authorities that are weaponizing queer rights to justify ethnic cleansing and genocide? How do you feel about this thing?
I mean, if I could just say, if we thought America cared about us, we would have better gun laws. Like, it's crazy how we're supposed to operate in this world so positively and so normally when so much stuff is going on. And now that we're at an era that everyone is so self-aware,
right,
it's hard to really operate in yeah.
I think it's like, I personally think it's us against the government. I always think, I mean, the crazy like tinfoil hats on, but like our government doesn't care about, it's not even, they don't care about like gay people, they don't care about anyone. They don't care about anyone, so it's just.
But maybe some more than others?
People with money.
Okay. You said
I mean, at the end of the day, people are profit. And we're definitely seeing that now when, you know, when our health goes to crap and no one cares.
Right.
And obviously the 1% is
thriving off of
and not paying taxes. If we were doing as much illegal stuff as everyone else, we would all be profiting.
I think it's up to people to care for people. And that's why I love New York. New York is high in community. And that's what feels very special about New York. There's a lot of like people who don't care about you in New York, but New York runs on community, and I find that very special.
That's true. Amen. So we're going to wrap this up, but first, in every single episode of Gents, we debunk a myth or a lie that I've been told or that I have quite often heard of. I have met a gay Arab guy in West Hollywood who works in the film industry and who said the following: I am not comfortable in a gay bar, nor in any gay space. Not my thing. It's not because you're gay that you need to show your ass to the entire world. What would you have answered if you were me?
Go to a different bar. No, I don't know. I find people who are uncomfortable at certain bars, that's like an insecurity of their own. I find the bars.
I find it weird when
West Hollywood's not welcoming in general, so that's your first problem is going to West Hollywood.
Right.
I would say I find it weird with Arab men feeling the need to be masculine, especially when they're talking about queer rights, because I've had a problem having relationships with Middle Eastern men because I like to dress. I mean, this is very normal for me. I like women's clothing, and I like to make it more mask on that side. But there's just this weird thing that they feel like the minute they say they're queer or think they're queer, dress queer, that they're gonna be queer. It's like you like what you like, and I've had that issue. So to that person, I would probably say that I'm not the right fit for you.
I would say, like, feel your oats. Like, if you don't feel comfortable in a space, it's because, I truthfully think it's because you're not comfortable with yourself. And, like, you should not feel these things, you know? Like, if you want to go to a gay bar and enjoy yourself, go to a gay bar. You don't have to show ass, you don't have to do any of that, but it's about, like, feeling really zen. And
that's very true, and it's very true about, like, all these guys who want to sleep with other guys while being straight. Yeah. So, again, Michael and Zach, Habibis and Habibtis, everyone in between, thank you so much for your presence tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
So, obviously, I will encourage everyone to subscribe and listen to my podcast, Jins, Jins. For those who don't know, it means sex in Arabic. I want to put sex in all the ears possible. Don't hesitate to share around, obviously, because you should always remember that someone, somewhere, somewhat needs a new light shed on Arab identities, Islam, sexualities, Arab origins, or anything that is prone to oppression. So do your part and pass the word around. Free Palestine, and see you soon on Gents. And now you can go. And now I am very pleased to present an amazing artist who did so much for the ballroom culture. For those who don't know about ballroom, we need to talk after this. We have so much to learn from ballroom, from their creativity, uniqueness, fearlessness, unconditional love, their sense of family. I can go on and on for hours, but tonight we welcome the incomparable Ousmane Wiles, also revered in the voguing community as the legendary Omari Nina Orichi. He is an African-American, West African phenomenal dancer, but also the co-founder of the influential House of Nina Orichi, established in October 2019. He is also the creative director of LES Ballet Afrique Dance Company. His choreography has been featured with Madonna, Janet Jackson, Beyonce, and many more. I'll shut up now because his talent speaks for itself. Let's give a very, very warm welcome to Omari Nina Orichi.
Music is our sanctuary, our life, where it defines our every move, where notes and measures are as important as air, water, and oxygen. A place where movement is a winding road that leads to the most beautiful rainbow of people of all colors and races, driven by one beautiful soundscape. If you could see this place, then we can be this place. We can make this dream our reality. Keep music first in your heart. Keep it in a sacred place. Keep it free of all contempt, free of opinion. Make it longer, stronger, faster. Make it so it'll never die. Make it for a new generation. Can you vision that place? Can you vision that place? A place where music is more important than the DJ, the promoter, the venue, the producer, your clique, your wardrobe, what your man said, what your woman said, what's hot, what's not. Can you see this place?
That was a joke. I'm not going to dance. Thank you, everyone. The evening came to an end, but not really, because now we can have a drink and share everything we've listened to tonight. So thank you very much. Thanks again to Camille, who put this whole evening together, and Vincent. And let's have a drink.